Kia ora. Welcome to this introductory video focusing on the PAT Pāngarau item report. The team here at NZCER has been exploring ways to develop an item report that can be available in both static and adaptive reports. We think we may have achieved this for you. So this item report is now available on NZCER Assist. The new filters allow teachers and leaders to investigate and analyse the data in different ways. Classes with multiple class levels sitting the adaptive test can be displayed on the same report. And there is a document and this video that provide insight into the new filters and report features. The item report can be accessed via the dashboard and the reports tab. So there's two ways that you can use the report. Today I'm going to discuss with you the features first about the report, and then take you into NZCER Assist and do a couple of little demos with you. So let's look at the report layout to start with. So it looks a little bit different when you go in for the first time. You can see at the top now of the item report that there's this chart, and we're calling it the encounters chart. So the encounter chart has all these red and green dots on it. They represent the icons, or they're called the icons. The icons represent the questions encountered by the students, and they are initially set at one encounter. On the left-hand side, we still have the scale. So you can see where each of the icons or the questions sit against the scale. That shows you its level of difficulty. So it shows you how they've been calibrated on the scale. Across the top, you can search by strand. So you can have all strands together, which is what the example here shows. So you could have 150 or 200 questions that have been encountered by your students. Or you could look at each strand, so you could look just at number knowledge. So you can sort of narrow the search down. Then over on the right-hand side is the filters, the filters tab, and you can filter in different ways now. So we've got encounters and percentage correct. You can make the icons bigger, and you can also sort in different ways. But this encounter chart is at the top of both adaptive and static. So for adaptive tests, each encounter represents a student that was given the question, whereas for the static, each encounter represents a student that answered the question and did not admit it. So let's have a look at the new filters now. The filters give you the flexibility to analyse the data in different ways. It's about asking questions of the data, and you can change the filters to discover that story about student learning in your class, or in your team, or year level. So you can search by encounters, and those encounters are initially set at 1, but you can move the filter to the right to identify questions seen more commonly. So you may find 4 questions that have been seen by 7 students, or you may find 15 to 16 questions that have been seen by at least 2 students. The percentage correct, if you move to a higher or lower percentage correct, it changes in the legend, and you start to be able to narrow down the search items. And of course, you can search in different ways as well by the number of encounters, so you can put them in order, percentage correct, and level of difficulty. But the best way is just getting in and exploring and giving it a go, which is what we've done. Sitting down below the encounter chart is the table still, which you could always seen within the static item report that we've always had. This is now available in both static and adaptive still. So the table displays the question descriptions, the strands, the scale scored level of difficulty, and how many students answered the question correctly. So on the right-hand side, you can see the strip bar, and you can see at the end of the strip bar the number of students who've sat it in the brackets and how many answered it correctly, along with the percentage. If you click on the item, report item on the left-hand side, it'll take you to the individual question, and the table itself adjusts if you click on strand, it will adjust us to see the strand questions. And as you change the encounters, it will also adapt down the bottom just to show the questions that students encountered. So I'm now going to take you into Assist and talk you through just two little scenarios of how I had a little bit of a play to get my head around using the filters. There are two ways that you can search. The first one I'm going to show you is actually through the dashboard that I've clicked here. So click on dashboard, then I'm going to click on the assessment. You'll usually have your little assessment strip that comes up to find which assessments your students are sitting. I'm going to a Year 5 class. So across the top, you have your tabs with each of the different reports, and you can see the item report is sitting in here. So when you first come in, like I said before, it's set at one encounter. So these are the items with at least one encounter. So you see lots. So you can have 150 to 200 items in one report for a class. So then if I scroll down the bottom, I can show you the table. So it starts to see there can be several pages there. You can click on scale, score, order. You can put them in strand order, just if you wanted to have a play down the bottom. But I really want to narrow that research down, because when I look at those coloured dots, I start to see quite a few in number knowledge. And actually, that's what I'm sort of focusing on a little bit at the moment, is what key knowledge are they, number knowledge are they needing to have to support other areas in mathematics. So I'm going to click on number knowledge tab at the top, or there's two ways, or the black number knowledge word. And now I can see, I've narrowed it down a little bit. And I might have counted them up and worked out that there are 36 questions in here. Now let's see if I move the encounters. So at the moment, it's here. If I move it along, I start to narrow. I can get up to 3 questions, seen by 5, 2, and then actually there's 7 questions, 1 question seen by 7 students. I'm going to stick it with it as 1. Okay, still too many questions for me to think about. I've got quite a range in here. I'm now going to just up the encounters to 2, double it, and then I might just narrow the percentage correct down to 40%. Okay, so I'm now starting to narrow that down. So if I now sort by percentage correct, I can now move all the 40% of incorrect to the left, and so at least 40%. So if I click on it, on an icon, a little table comes up. That table shows all the details for that item or that question. And I can start to see what it is. That one's about fractions. So I'm just going to click along the red ones and have a little look. It's about decimals, 1 and 3. That one's about pictures about multiplication. So I can just start to get a little bit of a sense and feel about them. But I'm still finding I need to look a little bit, I want to look at a few less questions. So I'm going to up it to 3 icons. So I'm going to put it up to 3 encounters this time, not 3 icons, 3 encounters. And I'm going to keep it at 40%, but I'm going to order it in level of item difficulty. So I now can see which are the easier questions through to, as I got the scale, the level of difficulty gets harder. And now I can scroll down the bottom and I'm down to 17 items. Yay, that's a little bit easier to analyze. So the more you narrow the research, the searches, using the search features, the more you start to see a little bit of a picture coming through. So now that's going to be easier for me to analyze and think around, what do I notice here? So when I do a little bit of analysis, I can see that I have a range on the PAT scale from 14.1, so some really easy questions, to 41.3. And when I start to look a little bit more closer, there's 11 questions on here that are about identifying and ordering number and about place value of 3 to 4 numbers too. So I've got an order number, 5 3-digit numbers, interpreting 3-digit numbers, even ordering decimals. So there's a little bit of place value coming out in here that I'm noticing. So I'm going to think about my teaching and learning. Now let's just have a little look at one of these questions. So if I click on the item, I can see here from the table I identified this question, 6 students had encountered it, but there were only 2 correct responses. So I can go to the item itself, to the question. Item and question we use interchangeably. It should pop up. It's not going to should pop up, but it's not going to do it for me at the moment. But I'll come down and I'll find the item itself. Here it is here, this one here. Yep, here is the item. Oh, sorry, it's clicked its way all the way through to a student accidentally. Here's the item here. And so 2 students got it correct and 4 didn't. So select the person who got 10 more points than Ella. So I'll be thinking around, okay, those 4 students. And then if I go back to the dashboard, I can find other questions down the bottom that are about place value too. And I've thought about a couple of students I noticed. Are they also having issues in another one of those questions? So one more than 999. Only one of the 3 students got that. Yes, both of these students here. Oh, they just added one on the end. I need to work on numbers and 300 moving to 4 into the thousands. So my little strategy is I'm thinking now, I need to think around number structure and the new curriculum, particularly on place value. And I need to push some students beyond 3 and 4 digits. And I need to do some acceleration practices, I think, with a small group of learners who are needing support to work with numbers less than 1,000 that are coming through in here, but I need to be able to push them on as well. So that's my first scenario. Just play around with the filters to see what you discover. Here's my second scenario. This one, I've got multiple classes. I've got a year 5 and 6 class, and I want to put them on the same report. So this time I'm going to go through reports. And when I go through reports, I'm going to click on 2024, and I'm going to go to term 1, maths and adaptive. And I'm going to choose my class, which is room 19. And I'm going to put them on both classes. If you've got a year level, if you're a team leader, you can put your team on here. Or if you wanted to look at a year level, you can do the same way as well. You can just look at the ones that you wish to, the classes. So now here's the item report along the tabs. And now I've got 2 classes in here, so there should be a lot more questions. So I'm really going to have to think carefully around how I wish to narrow the search down. Same thing, at the bottom is the table, at the top is the encounters chart. So this time we're moving into stats. So I really want to have a little look at stats to see if there's some questions on here that I need to focus in my next unit on statistics and probability. So as you can see, when it pops up, I've got about 42 questions there I've worked out. They have at least one encounter. And I'm now wondering if I can order them a little bit differently. And I'm also wondering what's the sort of looking at stats to probability sort of ratio of questions coming up here that I need to focus in on. So 1 encounters is too many, so I'm going to double it to 2. And this time I'm going to move it over to 60% correct and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to sort by level of difficulty because I quite like where it goes from the earlier questions to the harder questions. Oh, so now when I look at this, I have got some relatively easy questions on the scale that students have missed. I got some relatively hard, more challenging questions at the other end of the scale. So there's quite a range in here. So if I go to the bottom of the table, I can put them in scale score order. And I can see that I'm going from 11.2, so quite easy sort of simple questions to interpret, all the way to 56.4. But there's still quite a few questions for me to analyse there. I want to narrow that down a little bit more. So I'm going to make it up to 4 encounters this time. So I'm going to put it onto 4. Okay, so now I've brought that search down. Still going to stick with it at 60% and have a little look at my questions below. So the table is adjusted. So I've just got those questions now that's in the chart. I'm now going to put them in search order, going from 23.0 through to 43.4 PATM on the scale. Okay. I can now, when I work out, I've got 11 stats questions and 6 probability questions. So I think by looking at those early questions here, they're mainly about stats. I think I might just have a little look at the stats questions. Now, what's popping out at me quite quickly is when I read the question descriptors, there's interpret, and then there's another interpret, and they're all about interpreting the graph itself. So it looks like I might need to do some work on interpretation of graphs. So I think that's what I may focus on and think around just to get my unit started. So what I'm thinking around is identifying when I look at a question. I might just come in and have a little look at a question. See if I can click on one in here. So when I hover over the top, I can click on it. That's organizing. I'm looking for an interpret one. So let's have a little look at interpret. Here's interpret a line graph. Let's see what it says. And when I go to the question, it should click itself through, people. It's not doing it for me at the moment, but that's okay. I'll come down here, click on the line graph. There you go. Let's have a look at the question. How busy was the skate park at 10 a.m? And where did my students respond? You know, there's differences there. Most of them did B, which is the correct answer. Then I've got 2 at A and 1 at C. So very busy and very quiet. Okay, so looking at the way they're interpreting a line graph. Okay, so I need to think about that. Let's find another interpret. I'm just going to scroll down the bottom though. Interpret a tally chart. Let's look at that one. Okay. This has got a tally chart and they've got to think around that we're either black or grey. Maybe it's that word either. Okay, so maybe it's actually the reading of the question and the language in the question. And let's try one more. So I'm just comparing, thinking around, starting to think maybe it's about language as well in the question. Let's interpret the bar graph. How many more children? So it's bolded more. So maybe it's around the language of more. And what does that mean when you use interpretation? Okay, so now I'm getting some ideas around things that I could focus in on when it comes to teaching and learning. So it could be about identifying, I'm going to focus in on identifying the features of a graph, like the scale, the key, the tables, the tally chart, across a range of graphs, which it showed there. So the line, bar, tally, the pie chart, and the pictograph. And then I think I might start by doing some little discuss and defend starters and find some graphs, maybe using the ARBs could be helpful, that focus on interpreting a range of graphs, making statements about what they notice. And then I think it's about modeling that language as well, more, less, greater, and fewer. So what we have done here is just developed this item report, now available and adaptive, and we're putting it out as an iterative approach. So we're putting it out there to you to have a play, to have an explore, to see how it helps you analyze that data, to be able to narrow down and look at fewer questions as you use the filters on the right hand side. But we would really love some feedback from you. So as you feel free to email us here at assessmentservices.org.nzcr.org.nz. Do that again, assessmentservices@nzcer.org.nz. So as we narrow it down and you have a play, we will improve the functionality of this new report. Happy exploring.